The Time Meddler Part 3 is fantastic. Stephen and Vicky have great chemistry. It's just a really solid two companions despite the Doctor not being amongst them. It's engaging to watch them. Peter Butterworth, amazing as the monk. And his scenes with the Doctor are extraordinary. And then the Viking makeup's really good. They look great. And the conflict and them grappling with the prospect of an invasion, like the English commoners. Just awesome stuff. One of the best singular episodes of Doctor Who thus far. The Time Meddler, extraordinary piece of work. I'd like to now educate you all on some history, because this is my idea of, well, filling out the video, but also educating everyone, trying to make this kind of stuff exciting, because it's sometimes not so in school, and when it becomes more exciting in an elective later in a high school or in a university course, you've lost interest, you've already moved on to other things perhaps because it was already boring. But here we go. The Norman Conquest, or the Conquest, was the 11th century invasion and occupation of England by an army made up of thousands of Norman, Breton, Flemish and French troops, all led by the Duke of Normandy, later styled William the Conqueror. William's claim to the English throne derived from his familial relationship with the childless Anglo-Saxon king Edward the Confessor, who may have encouraged William's hopes for the throne. Edward died in January 1066 and was succeeded by his brother-in-law Harold Godwinson. The Norwegian king Harald Hardrada invaded northern England in September 1066 and was victorious at the Battle of Fulford on the 20th of September, but Godwinson's army defeated and killed Hardrada at the Battle of Stamford Bridge on the 25th of September. 3 days later, on the 28th of September, William's invasion force of thousands of men and hundreds of ships landed at Pevensey in Sussex in southern England. Harold marched south to oppose him, leaving a significant portion of his army in the north. Harold's army confronted William's invaders on the 14th of October at the Battle of Hastings. William's force defeated Harold, who was killed in the engagement, and William became king. Although William's main rivals were gone, he still faced rebellions over the following years and was not secure on the English throne until after 1072. The lands of the resisting English elite were confiscated. Some of the elite fled into exile. To control his new kingdom, William granted lands to his followers and built castles commanding military strongpoints throughout the land. The Domesday Book, a manuscript record of the Great Survey of much of England and parts of Wales, was completed by 1086. Other effects of the conquest included the court and government, the introduction of the Norman language, the language of the elites, and changes in the composition of the upper classes, as William enfeoffed lands to be held directly from the king. More gradual changes affected the agricultural classes and village life. The main change appears to have been the formal elimination of slavery, which may or may not have been linked to the invasion. There was little alteration to the structure of government, as the new Norman administrators took over many of the forms of Anglo-Saxon government. Here's how the historiography goes. This is quite interesting, I think. Debate over the conquest started almost immediately. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, when discussing the death of William the Conqueror, denounced him and the conquest in verse, but the king's obituary notice from William of Poitiers, a Frenchman, was full of praise. Historians since then have argued over the facts of the matter and how to interpret them, with little agreement. The theory or myth of the Norman yoke arose in the 17th century, the idea that Anglo-Saxon society had been freer and more equal than the society that emerged after the conquest. This theory owes more to the period in which it was developed than to historical facts, but it continues to be used to the present day in both political and popular thought. In the 20th and 21st centuries, historians have focused less on the rightness or wrongness of the conquest itself, instead concentrating on the effects of the invasion. Some, such as Richard Southern, have seen the conquest as a critical turning point in history. Southern stated that no country in Europe, between the rise of the barbarian kingdoms in the 20th century, has undergone so radical a change in so short a time as England experienced after 1066. Other historians, such as H.G. Richardson and Geo Sales, believe that the transformation was less radical. In more general terms, Singman has called the conquest the last echo of the national migrations that characterized the early Middle Ages. The debate over the impact of the conquest depends on how change after 1066 is measured. If Anglo-Saxon England was already evolving before the invasion, with the introduction of feudalism, castles, or other changes in society, then the conquest, while important, did not represent radical reform. But the change was dramatic if measured by the elimination of the English nobility or the loss of Old English as a literary language. Nationalistic arguments have been made on both sides of the debate, with the Normans cast as either the persecutors of the English or the rescuers of the country from a decadent Anglo-Saxon nobility. Interesting stuff. In any case, The Time Meddler manages to be a fantastic piece of fiction derived from that historical circumstance. Thanks so much, and do tune in next time to AOD's classic Doctor Who retrospective, but only if you're so inclined.